what happened 6 weeks ago.
I'm getting ready to go into this big marathon prep. So I went out, first lap, good. Second lap, boom, crushing it, on pace for 5 minutes. Third lap, crushing it, on pace for 5 minutes. Fourth lap, I couldn't catch my breath. I dropped down to my hands and knees and I blacked out. I started foaming out of the mouth. I lost pulse and I had a cardiac arrest and died on the track that day.
Welcome to the first Piece of Grit podcast. I am your co-host, Jaimes Veneziale.
Ben Fleischer
is your co-host. Today's episode, I'm so excited. He came into town. He is creator, entrepreneur, co-founder of Upspace, host of the Pure Ambition podcast. My man, Dom, the first guest on the Piece of Grit.
And he has great hair.
not quite as good as you.
This is a little salt and peppery, but like,
Yeah.
that's a nice mane. That's a solid
Yeah,
mane.
there we go.
Thank you. Yeah, I told Jamie I'm really thinking about just letting it flow. I mean, like while I have it, once in my life, I just need long hair.
So the move is you put so much energy and effort into the flow, into the mane, and you get there, and 99% of the time when it's there, you want to shave it.
Oh,
with so much energy.
Trust me, I've gotten to that
Freedom.
point before. I shaved my head in April of this year.
Feels good, right?
It felt great.
Yeah.
But then you get to this like awkward stage of like, I can't quite like style it, but it's not quite a buzz.
Yeah.
And it's just really weird and awkward. So you got to go through that awkward
But
phase.
it's a badass feeling. You feel liberated.
Yeah. I mean, when you shave it, it's just like, wow, I don't have to worry about anything. But
Last
dude,
year
this,
I did that.
I didn't comb my hair this morning.
That's
I didn't
natural.
put anything in there.
It's El Natural.
It's just au natural, baby.
Well, dope, man. I'm very excited to dive into this conversation because obviously the just dynamic here is so, number one, it's creative, but we have so much experience, so many things to talk about. Where I want to start is obviously what happened 6 weeks ago. So obviously, you are leading this life of hybrid athlete, creator, all these different things. What went down 6 weeks ago?
Well, I was out typical Saturday morning in Austin. What we do for fun is we go and just do really hard things. So we did, me and my 4 friends, we went out to do a timed mile, and I was excited because I was like, I'm light right now. I leaned out. I'm getting ready to go into this big marathon prep, and I wanted to see where I was at with the mile time. I mean, like I've run I did a couple marathons, ultra marathon. I've done lots of hard track workouts and I played football for 13 years. It was like I've done a lot of hard things, but I've never gone out and just like timed my mile, and people would always ask me like, what's your best mile? Like, I don't know, like no idea. So I was excited for it. And so I went out, and my two of the guys that I was with there, they went first. They ran the mile first. They both hit it like 5-minute mile on the nose. Like they were cooking. And then another friend, his hamstring was bothering him, so he ended up not running it, which ended up actually being a good thing. But me and my other friend, we went second, and so we're obviously pacing each other. And so from what I was told, first lap, boom, good. Second lap, boom, crushing it, on pace for 5 minutes. Third lap, boom, crushing it, on pace for 5 minutes too. And then that fourth lap, I mean, I don't remember anything after the second lap.
Were you chugging? Were you like chugging
I was,
along and you were feeling it?
I was
were you trying to muscle through it?
I was moving. I mean, it was tough, but from what I remember, and obviously like I'll get into like why I don't remember it in the first place, but I don't remember anything that happened after the second lap. And I have video from my friend's phone of me like chugging along in the final like 100 meters, 50 meters or so of the time mile. Buddy who I was running with, he started to pull away. He ran a 5:06. I ran a 5:15. And then after that, I walked over to the end of the track. I couldn't catch my breath. I couldn't bring my heart rate down. I was just like panting, struggling. And after a couple minutes, my friends were like, "Hey, like, we might have to do something here," because I was struggling. And then like I got dropped down to my hands and knees, and then all of a sudden like I blacked out.
Do you remember that? Like
No,
leading
I mean,
up to that
I don't,
drop?
I don't remember anything after the
So there
second
was
lap.
no like fear. Was there anything as you were on that last lap?
I don't even remember it. Last thing I remember is rounding like second lap, half mile, and my friend calling out like 800, like 230. So we're at 230 in the first half mile, and I don't remember anything after that. But after I collapsed, I went back. They were like, "Oh, what's happening?" Like my one friend like called an ambulance, and there was a firefighter who just happened to be on the track that day, who came over and he like grabbed me, like was like making sure, like seeing if I was okay, what was going on. But then like I was only down for like a few seconds, like I blacked out, and then like apparently like I don't know if it was like adrenaline, but like I came I came back.
Mm.
I like shot up and I was like so after a couple minutes of like not being able to like speak or whatever, like I came back and like my heart rate was like back to normal. They said like I was talking. I was like, Harry, no, I don't need an ambulance. Don't call it. I'm good. We're chilling. Meanwhile, like my one friend and the firefighter were like making sure I'm like sitting up and I'm able to do it. But like I'm coherent. Like I'm good again, apparently. And then all of a sudden I'm back on I go out. And this time, like I like started foaming out of the mouth.
Oh.
I like seizured out and I went purple and I lost a pulse and I had a cardiac arrest and died on the track that day.
Wow.
And
It's terrifying.
I literally just did a podcast episode on my podcast last week. It hasn't come out yet, but I did a podcast with my friend, one of my friends who was there on the track with me that day. And he told me, because I was like, dude, like, obviously this was a crazy thing for me, but I don't remember anything until I got pulled off the ventilator in the hospital like the next day. I was like, dude, like that had to be so traumatic for him, like, and my friends who were there, like
Your homies.
yeah, like he's just like
TKO.
about to die. And he told me, he was like, I just put my hand on your arm and he's like, and you were cold. And he said, I just started praying. And then a couple minutes later, the ambulance got there. Meanwhile, they were able to bring me back to life. They were able to get a pulse through CPR. So the firefighter, like, he was hitting CPR on me. Like, he was going back and forth, alternating with my other friend who was CPR certified. So they got a pulse back. I wasn't able to breathe under my own power, but they got a pulse back. And then the ambulance got there, took me off to the hospital, and I immediately got put on the ICU. So Harry, the guy who I did the podcast with, he called the ambulance. He's the one who prayed over me. Like, also just have this like deep connection with him now, which is like super profound. He's the podcast host of one of my favorite podcasts. And so on all around like holistic health and wellness. So my mom and I, when I moved to Austin a month prior, we were like listening to his podcast like the whole way down. So she got to meet him at the gym that I go to down there. So at least when he called her, he somehow got into my phone with like the emergency contact, which was her contact. So at least when she got on the phone, and which obviously it was like a Saturday morning, she's out back on the back porch having her coffee, thinking, oh, Dom's calling me, like, awesome, like we're gonna chop it up. And then it's like, hey, like this is Harry, and she in her mind was like, obviously, like, your heart just sinks into your stomach. And so at least she had a familiar voice of somebody that she knew, right. And it wasn't like somebody from the ambulance or like a random person calling her. So he kind of told her the situation, and she was like, I froze. And then she called one of her friends. She was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm frozen. I can't do anything. So then my mom's friend had to like walk her like step by step, buy a plane ticket to Austin. Huh. My younger brother like just got his license like a week ago. Like, she's like, she's like, I can't drive. You got to drive me to the airport. So they drove to like the Allentown airport, I think, because that was like the next flight. Missed that flight. Had to immediately drive from Allentown down to Philly for the next flight to Austin. She got on that, but had to go to Miami, layover in Miami to Austin. And so by the time she got to the hospital, it was like 10, 11 o'clock at night.
I mean, as a parent, that's your biggest fear.
Like, I'm like, I can't even imagine. She's got to go. She's halfway across the country. She can't do anything. And there's some really, like, I get chills just like thinking about it. And I can't watch the videos like without crying on my phone. And it's like her like in there. And it's me like on the ventilator and like, you know, like looking at that and seeing like, you know, the tube down my throat and like everything. But then there's like this amazing story of my friends that were there that didn't leave my side till I woke up. And they said, like, my mom walked in the room, like, I just had this new, like, energy.
Yeah.
And then, like, I opened my eyes for the first time. Still wasn't able to breathe under my own power, but, like, if she didn't get there, like, I don't know if I would have, like, ever woken up, like, that energy, that connection. And not, like, just hearing from them, too, like, yeah, like, we did a Joe Dispenza meditation, like, over you, and like, you know, we had like this group come in and like say prayers over you, and then like pastor of my church came in and like prayed over me and all this stuff. So
do you remember hearing your mom's voice?
No, I mean, I don't remember a single thing until I woke up. I mean, and I barely remember that. So it happened on a Saturday morning, and you know,
So
eight in the morning.
Monday.
Well, this is Saturday, or this is Sunday, like
Right.
Sunday around midday. So I was like, when I finally, it was like the third or fourth time that they took me off the ventilator, and they were like, he's gonna be able to breathe under his own power. So like they took it off, and so like I woke up and I was like obviously like super loopy. I don't remember anything. I don't remember anything, but I barely remember anything that whole Sunday. Like after I woke up, and then they transported me to another. They kind of like told me what happened, but like again, I don't remember like anything.
Was the tube out of your?
Yeah, and so, but like in the whole neck, but I really didn't start regaining like full consciousness, like the drugs. Like I mean, I was on like they had me on like fentanyl and like all these other drugs that were like keeping me alive. But it wasn't until like the next day when I started to come down off of the drugs and medication, I was like really fully grasping what happened and like what was happening. And so I'm in the cardiology department, like the cardiology floor of the hospital down there. Like got all these tubes and wires and everything hooked up to me, and I'm like, obviously the youngest person like on the cardiology floor. Like everybody that comes in, oh, you're too young to be here. I'm like, yeah, no kidding. Like I don't know why. I don't know what happened. I don't know why I'm here. And like so at this point, like I still don't know what caused it. I know that it's not the cardiologist found out like more recently, like, you know, in the past couple of weeks, that there's no structural damage to the heart. Like they thought it was like myocarditis or something like that. Because that's typically like when you hear cardiac arrest in a young athletic person, like that's what it is. But they found out it wasn't that, so it's something to do with like the electrical circuitry of the heart, which
did it like just like
so there's
the beat?
they think it's something, yeah. So it's something sent me into like ventricular fibrillation, which VF sends you into VT, which is ventricle tachycardia, something or other, which is sends you into an arrhythmia, which is an irregular heartbeat. So they don't know exactly what caused me to have that. They think it could be something called a channelopathy, which essentially like your heart has these little like ion channels that pump like electrolytes through these channels. And so I was like, well, did I have like an imbalance, or like was I deficient in any of the electrolytes? And they're like, no, you weren't. Because I could take electrolytes every day, and it was something, one of the channels specifically, they don't know which channel it was, so like which electrolyte like I was hyper deficient in or like wasn't getting to. And again, this is just, they don't even know if this is
speculative.
This is all speculative.
Right.
But basically when you're not, when this channel develops it's basically the channel developing a disease, whether it's something that I was born with and it's just d- gotten that way over time, or something recently had caused it to develop this disease. That's what like a channelopathy is.
Mm.
So that's like what the speculation is right now. And again, maybe by the time this podcast is out there, maybe I have more answers. I'll obviously share more about it once I get more answers, but that's where we're currently at right now, and I'm just taking it one step at a time, one day at a time.
And it's
Okay.
it's interesting. It's such an impactful story, but then when you start to dig into what me and you have talked about and the levels of where you were at in your creator journey in your personal life, like where you were at, you were ready for a change.
What was crazy is I was on the phone with you the day before.
Yeah.
Um,
Just talking
Yeah.
about it's just two buddies talking about like direction and where are we going and why are we going and all these questions. And I remember getting off that call being like, yeah, I'm really confident. You know what I mean? Like he was about to jump into a marathon prep. We were going to capture it. It was just going to be this huge step in the brand. Come to find out God has different plans. What has it been like since? Not only, obviously you've had to reteach yourself a lot of things that are basic to most people, but mentally, spiritually, emotionally, creatively, like what has changed since then?
I think it's just my perspective on life as a whole, and that one, I'm not afraid of death anymore. Like people hear people like, I'm not afraid to die or whatever, and it's like, well, now I really like I can like confidently say that, but it's also created a sense of urgency with my life of like I've had these ideas, these projects, these things that I want to do in my life, but I haven't lived with enough of that like sense of urgency to bring those things to life. So one of the reasons why like I came down here to Naples was because I have these like things that I knew Jamie was going to help me bring to life. And obviously, like, he's not with me all the time. I'm in Austin, he lives here, but it was like basically like proving to myself that like these ideas that I have, these things that I want to bring to life, like I can do it. Because I have had a little bit of like identity loss almost when I started creating. Like I was creating a lot of content around football. Like when I was a college football player, I was documenting that journey. When I graduated college and I went into the world of health and wellness, I was like, how do I compete with all the most saturated market literally on the internet? How do I separate myself? And I really gained a lot of traction when I started sharing my documentation, like documenting my journey to my first marathon prep. And it wasn't that I'm the first person to like go out and document a marathon prep, but maybe it was just something about my personality. Maybe it was something about the way that I was sharing things. Whatever it was, I started to like fall in love with that creative process and the creative journey. But my whole identity became like Dom Fusco, like, running and lifting. And like that was a lot of the content that I was creating. And then my whole essence of who I was as a creator, like I knew that that was going to shift because to right now, like I don't know when the next time I'm going to be able to run is. I don't know when the next time I'm going to be able to lift is. And basically I've had to prove to myself through, again, just getting reps again, reinventing myself as a creator.
Mm.
And I have this unique perspective of going to the other side and coming back and surviving it. There's been these things that I want to talk about that have a little bit more depth to them. And I really feel like I have a lot more to offer to the world, more than just like running and lifting and health and fitness, because that is a huge part of who I am. I mean, you ask Jamie, like I need to be walking. I need to be getting sunlight. I need to be drinking water. I'm very meticulous, like in particular about like the ingredients that I put into my body and like, like lowering blue. My roommates are like, it's like after like 7 o'clock, I'm like, yo, we got to bring the lights down. Like,
Get it. You're sensitive
yeah.
to energy. You're a creative.
I'm sensitive to energy. I have this very big, like I have this newfound connection to God.
Mm.
And I've always been like, I grew up in the Catholic Church,
Mm.
and I went to Catholic school, but it was like when I got to college, I was like, all right, like I'm free now, you know? And I always just felt like there was this like whole grip that the Catholic Church had, and it was just like it never resonated with me, and I felt like guilty. I was like, why? Like, why
What
doesn't
specifically on with the Catholic Church
it
didn't
just
resonate?
it felt like I felt like I didn't have a relationship with God. I was just like
Mm.
showing up to check a box,
Mm.
and I didn't want that. And it wasn't until this year when I mean, last year I started going to a non-denominational church, but it was like almost a year after I graduated from college when I felt like there was this thing that was missing in my life, and it was the spiritual component.
Mm.
And there have been times in my life where I was really spiritually tapped in, but it was only for like, a small period of time. Like I went on this retreat in high school called Kairos, which is like
Mm.
a religious retreat. And so, you're Kai high, and you're on it for a while, but then it
But it was
eventually
still
fades. It
Catholic.
exactly. And so there was just something that didn't resonate with me until last year. I just had an epiphany. I was like driving, and it was like, I think it's like this hole that's missing in my heart and in my soul is God.
Mm.
And so there's a really great church down the street from me that I started going to. And immediately, like that first day I went, like, I'm like, these people are so nice. Like, I love the worship. I love people are like hanging out and having coffee beforehand. And like, it felt right. It felt like that was where I was supposed to be. A couple of months later, I ended up spontaneously like getting rebaptized in like non-denominational Christian church. And then I had lunch with one of the pastors there, and he was like, Dom, do you know like what it means to like, like the number one thing that like we need to do as Christians? I was like, no, like I don't. And he was like, have a relationship with Jesus, have a relationship with God. I was never taught that. I was always taught I was going to CCD, and I had to memorize all the freaking catechisms or whatever else it was. And, if you don't do this, like, you're going to hell. And like, I didn't resonate with that. And again, like my grandfather is a very, very religious man. Like my mom, who now she doesn't go to the Catholic Church either. We go to Christian church, but there's just this newfound sense of like, I know we have these doubts of like, is God real? Is he not real? Like after this whole experience, I'm like, I'm not saying I stood and saw God face to face, but having that now like connection to him, and like I can hear him like speaking to me and putting like people in my life, putting experiences in my life that I know are not coincidences.
Right.
And almost like having that safety net of like, no matter what I do, I have God in my corner, and he's going to, if it's not meant to be, he's going to take me to the next thing that I was supposed to do.
Trust in the process.
It's trust. It's trust. It's having faith
Trust
in
and faith.
knowing that, like, one of my favorite books is The Alchemist, and it's like when you want something, the whole universe conspires to like help you get it. And like I feel that whether you call it God or source or universe, whatever else it is, like for me, like I know that God is guiding me along the way, and I don't have the fear of judgment. I don't have the fear of what other people are going to think of me. Like I'm still posting health and wellness content, but I'm sharing my unique perspective of the world. And most of the content that I created before, it's like, you've seen, here's why you use gels on long runs, and here's how to run and lift on the same day, and a lot of these things that I really, really enjoy creating and have a lot of fun with, and I can throw my creative spin on them. But ultimately, I feel like I can offer more, and I want to offer more.
It's not just surface.
It's not just surface level,
Yeah.
right? Exactly. And like
You're-
health and
you're
wellness.
connecting with your heart. You're connecting with
Right,
love. You're connecting with source.
Yes.
And then when you put all these other components, there's a bit more purpose to what what you're trying to do. And
Exactly.
you're trusting
Exactly.
that
And
that's the way that it's supposed to be.
and prioritizing like your health and fitness, which is like that was most of my content. Like I believe like that is super important, because when you do that, when you prioritize your physical health, it pours over into all other buckets of your life.
Right.
But you need to have that synergy between mind, body, and spirit, mental health, physical health, spiritual health. And that has to be intertwined in order to like for you to be at that best version of you and continue to grow and elevate each day. So for me, it's like, how do I help others do that? Specifically, it's like this next generation. Like I'm 24, and I know that there's a lot of eyeballs on me of people that are around my age, but also younger. And it's really unique because my audience is going to continue to grow along with me. And I'm just sharing my thoughts. I'm sharing my journey. I'm sharing my experiences. And ultimately, I want to show people that, hey, whatever you want to do in life, like it's possible and we need it. And so I want to be that voice, that picture, that vision for people to say like, hey, he went out and he had no business doing this. He didn't grow up with money. He didn't have the equipment. He didn't have the experience. I just went out and started. And now it's brought me on this path. But this whole wild, crazy journey, I haven't once like felt sorry for myself or let people say like, I'm so sorry this happened to you. I'm not, because this is all a part of his process. Is all a part of the journey. This happened for me. It didn't happen to me. And it's really just changed the whole trajectory in my life.
But we've had a lot of conversations while you've been down here about creativity. And creativity is something that I you've taught me based on the experiences that you've gone through, but it's newness of experience. And the more that when you're in a creative world, like creating content online, you're really looking for ease. You're looking for streamline. How can I get a post out every single day? How can I? And what it does sometimes is it forces you down this hallway of like, what's everybody else posting? What's new? What's hot? What can I be inspired by of somebody else creating content that I can then put my own creative spin on, like you talked about. But the creative process really in its truest form is your personal experience. And what we talked about post everything happening is creatively, this is your new superpower, because you've experienced something that 99.9% of people will never know what it feels like to cross to the other side and make it back. And I'm interested to get Ben's perspective on the idea of newness spurring creativity. How has that been true in like your dynamic of what you do?
Yeah, and just to touch on that, I think you're navigating life with a whole new set of lenses on. And it's inspiring because, like you said, you're not a victim. It's actually a gift. So, kudos to you in that, with your previous journey, but being open to the next chapter. And, we were chatting about that earlier. I mean, kind of tying this into creativity. And, with your read on it, with the conversation around Rick Rubin, it's energy, right? It's energy. It's trusting the process. It's finding that sweet spot to some degree. And we're living in this world of like people are chasing their tails around what's the next, the newest, the shiniest. Where do I need to be? How do I fit in? That drives fear. That drives anxiety. How do you take a step back? And I'm not saying from the extreme, but how do you take a step back from that experience to let that be your creative process as you are in your own journey?
I'm curious for you, like we're all creators, all three of us in a different sense of the word, in a different form. Like for you, where does that creativity, like that desire to create, come from? Like where does that stem from for you?
Passion and inspiration are always the key. There's been lows in my journey. I've got a couple of years on you guys, but there's been lows in my journey where like it's like the creative block. What do they call it for writers?
Writer's block.
Writer's block.
Yeah.
The creative block. You're just like, fuck, man. What am I? What's my purpose? And it sounds like you went through that as well. I've shared this with Jamie, 3-4 years ago, pandemic, I reached a point, it was just like, you're just checking boxes at some point. I did this, great, that, money, this, it's there. But suddenly there's an emptiness. You're feeling like your journey's not necessarily complete, and your creative process starts to get compromised to some degree. And it's like, how do you pick yourself back up? So we were talking about, I was a bachelor up till I was 41 or 41. And, my journey, I had to take a step back so I can move forward and find that creativity again, and find a partner, and find wholeness, and a little bit more purpose. And, I shifted my 2019 in that space of, doing a lot of introspective work, taking I don't want to say a time out on my business, but a time out to some degree, because the passion wasn't necessarily there the way that it used to be. So I was trying to find my passion, and I was also ready to source and find a partner. So, it's being uncomfortable. It's getting uncomfortable. What this whole podcast is about, the grit, the grind.
Yep.
Where there's grit, there's got to be purpose and growth. So yeah, you got to put yourself through some uncomfortable circumstances and situations to find some passion, to find some growth. I ended up finding my partner right before the pandemic, but that's, trusting the universe, trusting source. Along with that came a pandemic. Who would have ever expected a fucking pandemic? All the businesses out there that affected, it affected everyone's business to some degree. I was hit with tariff issues, like anything that you could possibly think of. Suddenly I have this beautiful space, and, no one wants to come to work anymore. You got to navigate that. And then it's crazy, but you got to go through those hard lessons to get you through, and trusting the source that there's a reason for it. It's easy to get down on yourself, for sure.
And I think it's interesting because from being in the seat of a creator for the internet, and then being on the business side, I think the business of creativity can sometimes be put in boxes. And we talked about it, like giving creativity, putting guardrails around creativity, trying to put creativity in a box. Okay, from these 2 hours, I'm going to be creative. It really is hard to do that. And especially when you're in a business environment where there's deadlines, there's KPIs, there's all these things that force you to kind of be in this stress. You're getting injected with cortisol. That just drains the creativity right out of you. And this weekend, at least for me, it was like, how do you spark that? And not only, you can't force that. There is no forcing that creativity to start, but it's like, how do you create an environment? And at least from what I recognized, it's creating space, not putting yourself into a box for, this is what I'm going to create, this is why I'm going to create it, but being okay with putting some confines around you. By this time it'll be out, but we just filmed the YouTube video in 24 hours. And that was something that, you can speak on it, but like
filmed, edit, produce, published 24 hours.
And it was time for us to put confines around, no more overthinking. Let's just do, let's just be, and let's just create. And we were so comfortable with it being shit. We were so comfortable with it just being like, all right, this was like a good experiment, good exercise. We even went into it saying, this is a creative exercise.
Well, what's the opposite if you're not doing that? Nothing.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And just to chime on something in that process that you're going through, I think, this conversation is going around, like, how do you get your creative process? It's hard. Something that I learned, as entrepreneurs, being all over the place, you're in 100 different places, in real time. The biggest thing that I've learned, that I wish I knew when I was younger, was creating the space so you could actually turn off, like giving yourself the discipline to learn how to actually turn it off, whether it's for 5 to 10 to 15 minutes. Like, part of before I start my day period, I roll out of bed, I go outside, and I meditate for a minimum of 10 minutes, but I'm doing my best to think about nothingness and going in. And I find a lot of creativity comes from that. So just passing that along.
Yeah, because I think what we're in a world of like your phone's always on you. You're always getting injected with like what's going on, what's happening in the world. I'm interested because we've talked about it. Like in this new phase of your life, what have you done personally to spur creativity?
Mm. Surrender.
Mm.
When you try to force so hard, it forces right back. A magnet, right? Like you take two magnets and you push them even harder together. It's not gonna work. It's been one. I agree. Like you can't just force creativity, but you also have to like
Wrap it.
show up. And like The War of Art is one of my favorite books by Stephen Pressfield, and it talks about just like beating the muse and just showing up every day. And you might show up and write one word, 3 sentences. You might only get some ideas. Like you might not make that much progress, but it's just continuing to show up and do the thing. And like for you, I mean, you saw me. I'm like, when we're about to when you're like, yo, let's get to work. I'm like, yeah, let's go walk. I'm like, I don't like if we're just sitting here and then we're like, all right, let's just like hop on a computer, sit here across and try to like make something that doesn't work. Like we literally came up with the idea we're going to do this video and this is what it's going to look like. And then we're going to execute it on a walk. Like every time I need to, it's almost like this motion. Like for me, it just things come to me. Like when I'm in motion, like if I'm not one of those people who just like can like sit there and all of a sudden something spurs. I'm like, I need to walk. I need to move. Beforehand, it would be I would run or something like that. Just something that I can kind of just like turn my mind off, not be stimulated, and just like allow things to come to me. So for me, it's been a lot of meditation. It's been a lot of prayer. It's been a lot of just walking. And then like I'll walk and I'll come back and I'll have something. I'll always have something, and that one little spark will turn into something. So for me, it's been a balance of surrendering to like, hey, what is on my mind? What is on my heart? What is this like concept? Maybe I have an idea for a concept, but I'm working through it in my head about how to like kind of strategize it and bring it to life. And so for me, like the meditation aspect of it is for me to just be able to like be present in the moment and turn off my monkey brain. And then walking like with no phone, no stimulus, like nothing like that. That is like the engine starting to
When do you meditate?
turn up. Morning. Yeah, morning for me.
So you have a process.
Yeah, I have a process.
Is that something that fleshed out as
I used to like train for like I used to train for like hours upon hours every day. So in the morning it would be like I'm up and like I'm getting ready to go for my run like right away because I got things to do the rest of the day and I got to get a lift in later on in the day. Like it was constantly just going from thing to thing to thing. And it was really hard to make space for like to do anything differently. Like you look at my content for like a long stretch of time, it was like everything kind of had the same energy. It had the same vibe. It had the same feel to it, which is like fine because your audience begins to, develop like what to expect. But I love nuance. I love novelty. Like I want to go to a new coffee shop like every day. Like I want to sit at a different place. I want to listen to different music. I'm going to take a different route. I'm going to walk a different route every day. Like I love novelty and newness. And I'm always trying to think like, what is something that like I haven't created before? What is something that I've never seen that like I want to bring to life to this?
That's adding creativity to your process.
Exactly.
Because you're changing up changing up your norm.
That's why I moved to Austin.
Yeah.
Like I needed to get out of my environment. I needed to get away not getting to get away from the people. Like I love the people in Philly. I love my family, my friends, everybody there. But I needed to be in a new environment. I needed to be stimulated in different ways. I needed to be challenged in new ways. Did I think this was going to be the challenge? No, but it has unfolded perfectly. Like this was meant to happen. Like this is all part of the plan. And it's when I think about like the chain of events, it's like it's all perfect. everything is perfect, exactly the way it's unfolding. All this is to say is I was doing all these things and I wasn't making the time to be creative. I felt like if I wasn't like sitting at my desk or like on my computer jamming away, like I wasn't being productive.
Mm,
Where in reality, like I'm able to be more productive when I'm able to like open my sketchbook and just draw. I'm a terrible drawer. I can't write for shit, but like that for me is just like, the colors and just like the patterns and like doing that. Or maybe it's like I'm literally like singing or I'm throwing rocks at a tree. Like, I don't know.
dancing.
Like
Yeah.
there's dancing, like there's just certain ways for me, like, hey, I'm my team like of guys like they laugh because they're all very like tech focused, like all that, and I'm
Optimism.
very much like kind of the opposite. Like I've had to learn what a system is and like
Mm,
how to operate a Google Calendar and like time block and all these things. I'm very much just like fly by the seat of my pants
Get
type
it.
type
I
of
get.
guy.
Yeah.
Exactly. So for me, it's just like I have not been training as hard. I'm walking a ton, so I'm still able to like still prioritizing my wellness, and I'm still doing like yoga and stretching and mobility, and I'm really building my body back up because my body was beat up from all that I had been doing to it and not taking care of it properly. And so this is an opportunity for me to take a step back and also like on a typical Saturday, I was like, I got to run 15 miles before we do anything. We got to go to the gym at some point. It was like yesterday, we just like, we still walked like almost 20,000 steps throughout the day. We worked for like, 14 hours straight almost. We had 2 meals for probably a cumulative like 30 minutes. And we were just grinding. And like beforehand, it would be like, I can't do anything unless I push myself crazy hard physically, and now it's just like no, like I have a new relationship with like what it means to like be healthy.
And I think it's funny because we live in a world of optimization right now. We live in the world of biohacking. We live in a world of calendars and like this is time blocking, structure. And like, at least for me, being a young business owner, the thing that I'm always trying to do is be smart with my time. Be smart with my time. What am I spending my time on? Am I productive? Am I pushing projects forward? But the problem with that is it leaves no space to just be. And I think what we have found this weekend and what I've found recently is just the more that you allow there to be space for nothing and allow there to be space for newness of experiences. Like I was talking about this the other day. I go on the same morning run around the same block. And I like always am just like begrudgingly going to do it because it's like it's the same thing. And I want newness. And then I realized for anybody out there that's like, I can't travel, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't create newness of experience. Even the same thing that you've seen every single day, there's something new that you just haven't even seen yet because you're so up here, you're so in your brain, you're so like wrapped up in what does she think about me, or when is this due, or when do I have to do that? But there's no ability to just look and observe and be aware. And I think meditation, journaling, writing, spending time doing nothing, that creates awareness because we're so worried in this day and age to be bored. We're so worried that like, oh, like I'm missing. Oh, it's almost 1 o'clock. The game's almost on. Like I got to make sure that I like
FOMO.
exactly. And there's
Constant FOMO.
no ability to just be okay with being.
With yourself.
Exactly. Everybody's scared of being with themselves. Everybody thinks that they're not good enough because this person did that, and why am I not doing that? And it just creates this constant flow of just it. It's a constant rat race. It's constantly trying to escape that. So now that we're where we are, what is next for you, man? What is next?
That's a great question, and one that still thinking about. I don't. I would love to say I know, but I'm excited to say that I really don't. Over the next 2 months, I'm going to be traveling a lot to new cities, to new places. I'm actually putting on a retreat, not a retreat, a trip to Tanzania in February, where a friend of mine, he has a nonprofit in Tanzania that helps businesses start to flourish and help the economy. And then they're also building a school for underprivileged kids in Tanzania. And I've been like just very passionate and like have a lot of admiration for him. Like graduated from like Carnegie Mellon, one of the best schools in the country, and like saying, I don't, not going to med school because he wants to start this nonprofit. And for me, I'm like, that's amazing. So we're going to climb Kilimanjaro. We're going to bring people there. We're going to do the climb of Kilimanjaro. All the money's going to go back to him and people in the village. For me, like I am just motivated by service. I'm motivated by the legacy that I want to leave. And I look at my life as like this book. I think if a book was written on my life, like what would I want this chapter, what would I want this page to read? Would this be a book that people want to get through, or would it be something that, yeah, no, I want to bring as much value to the world as I possibly can. So what's next is like my mission is to inspire and empower 100 million people to become the healthiest, happiest, most fulfilled version of themselves. And that was my mission. That was my why before the cardiac arrest happened. Now I feel like that mission has just been amplified. And so there is so much unknown in the coming months, in the coming years, but I am so excited to lean into my own curiosity, challenge myself to put myself into new environments, new challenges, like go to Naples, Florida and produce a video in under 24 hours. Like there's just this incredible world out there to explore. And the things that we deem like worthy of having our mental energy and time of like, our to-do lists, our endless to-do list of boxes that we have to check on a day-to-day basis. And man, I have to pick up the laundry. I have to drop the kids off at school. I have to go take them to hockey practice. I have to, clean the house. I have to walk the dog. Like all these things. It's like, I want to change the way that I literally want to change culture. I literally want to change the way that society works. And how do I do that? Is like, I start with me. Because you can't change anybody until you change yourself first. You can bring a horse to water. You can't make it drink. I know that. But at the end of the day, it's like I can't control the outcome of like how many people like I'm going to positively impact or how many people are going to see my videos or whatnot. But I want to challenge people to think differently, to lean into their own curiosity and to just seek novelty in their lives. And really think about at the end of the day, like none of this really matters. Like at the same time, it matters so much because like our time is scarce and everybody in here sitting in this room and everybody listening has something unique that they offer to the world and they can bring to the world. That's their art. It's like, I feel like it's my responsibility to use the gifts that I've been given to make a positive impact on the world. Like every decision I make or everything everything that crosses my mind, I'm like, is this making the world a better place? Like, am I growing from this situation? Like, I don't want to spend a second doing anything that is not, I shouldn't say that because there's things that we have to do on like a day-to-day basis, like answer emails and like whatever that we don't necessarily want to do, but we are the creators of our own reality. And like life just ebbs and it flows and it's not meant to be this thing that is like dreaded that we're just, just trying to get to the next day. Oh, just staying busy. Like, I was like, what are you doing to maximize your human experience? And that's for me, like, I want to maximize my own human experience. And I feel like I've been given a platform to like share my experience, share with people that developing some sort of spiritual practice. Like for me has been massive. I think there's so many people that have like this hole in their heart. They have this hole in their soul, and that can only be that can only be filled. That can only be satisfied with the spiritual practice. Like for me, like feeling like that love from God and spreading that message each and every day has given me so much fulfillment. And I just have so much gratitude for even being able to sit here with you guys. And I just want to continue to amplify. It's like a big word for me. It's just like amplify. So what's next is like I'm still discovering who I am as a creator, and I'm really excited to just not be attached to this identity of like a running creator, and give more.
It's interesting, Ben. I want you to talk about changing what they're trying to do at Upspace is change an industry, change the world. Like they're a very mission driven company. You have an experience actually changing an industry. Talk about that and how that was spurred. Like I think that's such an interesting story, and I think it plays into like kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, when you're in it, you never really feel like you're changing it,
Mm.
and that's ego, that's headspace. So, one, I want to admire you at 24 years old of these practices and these modalities that you're way ahead of the game. So kudos, like the energy that you have is contagious. So you're getting. I mean, I don't want to say you're getting started, but you're a force. It's awesome. So that's great. Um, when you're building anything from the beginning, that's why I love being around you guys. Like it is contagious.
Mm.
I miss this feeling of like newness, right? Working on my business for 17 years. And it's a blessing. It's definitely a blessing. You get hardened the longer you get at it. You're learning more lessons. There's shit that you can't even control. But having these practices that you're currently developing and experiencing makes the process a lot easier. And I would say in my late 30s, mid to late 30s, I was challenged with a handful of things that I couldn't even I never expected when I started my business. But going back to changing an industry, you're in it. You're not thinking about like, oh, for me at least, I wasn't so worried about changing the industry. I was focused on enjoying the ride, and with the mindset that I'm doing good. I'm doing good while doing good, right? Like it was simple. I was, health and wellness, similar to you guys, that was always important in my life. And back 20 years ago, there wasn't really much available. I'm a snowboarder, skier, getting up for a run. Your option was a Red Bull. And I'm taking these things down and I feel sick. I'm like, so that's where I got into it. It's like, I want to create a better version of Red Bull. And then the other side of it was, all right, how do I reduce the sugar? It was only chemicals out there, aspartame, saccharin, and the white papers out there that these things were carcinogens. And that's when I stumbled across stevia. And that was my aha moment, similar to you. It was like, wow, I can actually change an industry. But I want this selfishly. I want to use this for myself. So I was like, there's better options for health conscious consumers, diabetics, and overall an industry that is, at the time, they were just pumping high fructose corn syrup. That is a drug. That is addictive.
Can I ask you a question too, by the way? Like you hear like high fructose corn syrup is like, the main thing you should avoid. And I do. But what is it about high fructose corn syrup? Like why is it used? Like I'm always wondering, like
Simple.
Why?
It's cheap.
It's cheap, but
It's
what
a
is it?
filler.
But what does it do?
It's addictive. When you drink a sugary drink, right?
Does it preserve
When's
like
the
the
last time you
shelf?
drank a Coke?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Maybe when I was in Mexico, like a couple years ago.
How good was it?
Oh, it was delicious.
Delicious.
It was so
Great,
good.
right? Shit's addictive. Sugar's addictive. High fructose, when you're pumping 20, 30, 40 milligrams, your senses, your palate, you thirst that, right? And there's a reason for it. And I mean, this is a whole other podcast of why, throughout the years it changed into, fats, taking fats out of your diet. You had to replace it with something else.
Go a little deeper into that. What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Like, so when did you see there's this huge shift in terms of dietary, like people explaining like, hey, this is what you should do with your diet. Like, were you?
Well, back 20 years ago, information was not readily available like it is now. And people were talking about it, but having access to so much information and fact checking wasn't a real thing. So guess what? Sugar companies are getting fact checked. They're also putting a lot of effort and energy into, trying to find ways of these better alternatives that they're not as good. So the science is out there. You talk to nutritionists. You look at the charts of diabetics, and when I forget which president put out there that there was an epidemic around fat. That causes heart disease.
Yeah.
That's when food companies and CPG, consumer packaged goods, started pulling fat out. Everything used to be, if you remember, on packaging, low fat, low fat, low fat.
I mean, even still today, people think that fat is
still see
bad.
that.
It's like,
right. So if you're pulling fat out, you got to put something else in a product. What's next in line that's cheap, inexpensive, and readily available? And we won't even get into our crop system in the United States. Corn, a lot of the high fructose corn syrup, it's corn, man. We grow tons of it, and you pump that into our food, and suddenly with fat going out and sugar going in, you look at the charts of how many Americans are diabetic or pre-diabetic. I believe it's 1 out of 4 right now. It's staggering. And listen, I'm not in the business to say it's all about sugar-free. Like, it doesn't have to be sugar-free. We can reduce the sugar. There's no reason to have a yogurt that has 30, 25 grams of sugar, or a beverage that's consuming 25, 30, 40, 50 grams of sugar. I'm sure you guys saw it with Dunkin' Donuts. Wasn't there a...
Oh,
yeah. It was Bobby Parrish, it was Flav City. He did like it was like one drink.
140 grams of sugar?
Yeah, it had like more sugar than a dozen donuts or something like that.
Right.
Which for me, I'd rather just eat the dozen donuts. I'm eating a dozen donuts for sure.
You're gonna cry, hibernate, but yeah, it's a real thing.
When did you realize that, number one, this is a problem, and when did you become passionate about solving it?
There was a lot to unpack, and there was a lot to solve. Being young and naive, and the journey, right? Like, I was traveling the world. I was learning the ins and outs of harvesting, extracting. I started with stevia. I knew this was, I don't want to say the holy grail, but it was an incredible solution to taking sugar out of food, and that was natural. That came from a plant that was plant-based. Again, I was having this conversation 18 years ago, like long time ago.
Mm.
But to be fair, stevia 18 years ago tasted like shit. When I started formulating with it, I was like, this is awful. How do I make this taste like sugar? 2, how do I make this accessible to food and beverage manufacturers? 3, how do I make it ease of use? How do I make it easy? And that was kind of the foundation of product innovation, product development, from upstate New York, coming from Rochester, New York, moving down to Naples, Florida. I was getting to work, but it was exciting. I wasn't so concerned of like, is this going to make me rich and successful? I was concerned of, how do I create change in the world? And, how do I help people? That was really it, and create better products for myself and products for diabetics, health conscious consumers. And it became contagious. I didn't, it was funny. Suddenly stevia started becoming popular. And not all, if you've tried stevia or stevia sweetened products, not all stevia tastes the same, or not all products taste the same, because it's a very complicated ingredient to work with.
And it's funny because Dom and I talked about this yesterday, of the idea of like the pursuit of something, but when it's fueled with passion and mission, you're so much more likely to, number one, get there and enjoy the process. And it's funny, being somebody that runs a creative agency, number one, there's 1 million plus creative agencies. There's thousands of them, and they're all obsessed with the same idea: $10,000 a month, $20,000 a month. How can we get to $100,000 a month? And it's this kind of like this like robot style of like, you do this, then you do that, and there's no passion, there's no mission behind it. And it's interesting listening to two people that are so unbelievably mission focused, all it does is want to inspire me. How can I do that? How can I? And people listening to this, it's like, no matter what you're doing, I think the less you focus on how much money is this going to make me and what is this going to, rather think about what is this going to do for people. That's where I see, that's where I see, number one, you're enjoying the process, you're enjoying the journey. And second of all, I think your likelihood of success goes way up.
Good point. And to chime on something that you said, Dom, that's important is service. Like you're going to where'd you say you're going?
Tanzania.
Tanzania to be of service. And Jamie, we talk about that all the time. Like you give back one, you get back 10. And when your heart's aligned in that service, 100x every single time. Every single time. And I'll share this with you guys, and you're already doing it, so it's awesome. You're like an old Buddha. So part of my journey, man, was I'd burn hard because coming cut from that, old school mentality. My father's a Brooklyn Jew, built a business from zero. Like it's just sink or swim mentality all day long. There was no outlet to be like, I'm literally having, I'm having heart palpitations. And I've shared some crazy stories with Jamie. Like I literally was getting sick. I was working so hard. That's when I had to take a step back. My doctor said before I was 40, I was on pace to have a heart attack. Not because I wasn't healthy. Worked out every day, did all my modalities. I was just burning myself, and I wasn't dealing with mental health. And it all intertwines. So one thing I always did when I started a business, no matter what, being broke, I always figured it out. It wasn't about a glamorous trip. I would go on a trip every year somewhere that made me very uncomfortable. Take a backpack, grow a beard, whatever it may be, throw yourself in, an uncomfortable town or city. I mean, I'd like to travel somewhere, and I spent a lot of time in Asia. So, going to some village in the middle of nowhere and just immersing yourself in the culture and taking a step back and just observing and listening, that would make you realize, like, holy shit, I got a good life. Things are really good. Like, that is struggle. Like, what am I struggling with? And you come back to the States, you're like, wow, we are soft. We are soft. What are we complaining about? We have nothing but a blank canvas to create. It's not going to be perfect. The journey is never perfect, but you can make it perfect. Depends on the lenses that you want to put on. You took your experience, that recently happened. Basically, your heart shut down as a blessing, as a gift, right? Most people would look at that and be like, "Oh, why me? I'm the victim. My life is totally effed."
Where does that come from?
Right. That energy that you're giving off it's incredible. Like you see the world with a new set of lenses to just take on it. And it's not, you're saying it right now, like I don't necessarily know, and it's not going to be perfect, but I'm trusting the process and I'm trusting source.
Yeah.
And I'm trusting my ability to execute.
So where does that come from? Because people that go through what you go through, I mean, most of them, number one, aren't creators and don't live their life in the public eye in a lot of ways. But number two, most people don't have the resiliency to look at it in the lens you look at it from.
I mean, one, I think, is from my mom. She's just always like glass half full type of person. And all the things that she's had to go, I mean, she's got such a wild story, and she's now just like thriving and helping so many people. Like I just see like what she does for her work and with her business and the way that she lives her life and the way that the people that she attracts in her life and the people that have like that will show up for her, like that is motivation for me. That is like, I'm so blessed to have such a great role model in my life. She's the one who instilled, the value of having faith. And even though, neither one of us like still go to Catholic church, like she is one of the most like spiritually like, tapped in people that I know. And I'm so grateful that she brought me up the way that she did. And, all the things that happened with my parents getting divorced and everything, like, and I love my dad too. Him and I have a great relationship, but it's different than the one that like I have with my mom. Like I just have this connection to her, like that I don't have with anybody else. And so it's always like having her there, and she's always just like been that like anything is possible type of like figure for me. And then, I mean, dude, I after going through this whole thing, I'm always asking myself like, and I ask other people too. I'm like why do you care so much about this thing? Why are you giving it so much life? Why are you giving it so much energy? For me, like I am somebody who's like I want to challenge myself. I want to do something hard because I know that growth is going to come from it. Like you said, like we're so soft, like as a society. Like there's so much comfort, there's so much ease. Like you wake up and you walk into the
We're
cabinet, you open
soft
the
in America.
fridge. Yeah.
Let's be clear.
Like you
We're not
go
in Ukraine right
right, exactly. Like you can go and you know go to the supermarket and get any like buy anything you want, like you can Amazon Prime something, it's there the same day. Like for me, I like working for things. I like the process of like just being a beginner and just starting from the ground up. And I I I don't know where it comes from because I haven't always had that, but it's just like a culmination of like these past couple of years on really going into this personal growth journey and trying, failing, trying, failing, trying, failing. Oh, you get a little bit of taste of success here. It's just this like I see life as not something that we're just like trying to get to the end of. It's like something that like I am cherishing and I'm so grateful for. And like the odds of being born are like 1 in 400 trillion or something crazy like that. And it's just like every second matters. Not saying that you have to like be hyper productive at every moment. And that's something that I'm not struggling with, but I'm healing is my relationship with time because I am like, I want to do everything with such a sense of urgency because I'm like, none of this matters. I could be going tomorrow. Like I could be going today. Like, time. I never thought that I was going to almost die. Like, and I think about that, like, what if I did die that day? How would people remember me? What would people write in my obituary? Like things like that. Like I think about those things on a day-to-day basis. And so for me, I'm just very driven by what is that legacy that I want to leave? How do I want to leave this world? Like I want to leave it better than I found it. And so for me, I think it's just been a culmination of trying things, failing, getting humbled, embracing novelty, not being afraid to step outside of my comfort zone, and just seeing life as this just literally it's like an experiment, and it's and when we take ourselves too seriously, it holds us back from achieving the person that we were meant to be.
Go ahead.
Now, one thing that I'm hearing, from Dom is that you haven't even said your gratitude for life.
Oh, dude.
And we take that for granted.
Every day.
Like we would, my phone doesn't work, or why isn't this coming in? My Amazon, it's like, fuck, man, like you've like stripped down to the core of like simplicity, and that gratitude is resonating, and
Dude,
and it's so important.
Right? It is. I'll on the way, I forgot my laptop on this trip. Like I get through security, I'm like, I forgot my laptop. Yeah. I was like, I'm literally like, this has all of my creative stuff that I wanted to bring down with Jamie. I don't have any of it. But I'm sitting there in the airport. I'm about to board my flight, and I'm just like, whatever. Oh well, I have my phone. Like, Jamie's got a laptop. Like, whatever, we'll make it work. Sit down on the plane. I go on my phone to edit a video that a company was like paying me to create this video, and I go to edit. And I realized I never turned on the mic when I recorded, and I didn't test it. So that whole piece of content, worthless. So I'm like, you know what? I was going to get this piece of work done, and then I was going to edit, and then I was going to do all this work on my computer on the laptop. Like, well, can't do any of that. I read like the entire book on the plane, The Creative Act, and it set me up for exactly the headspace that I needed to be in for this weekend, that like I wouldn't have been in if like
those chain of
events didn't happen.
In the process, right?
Exactly. And we just so happen to make an entire YouTube video about the book, and it's just like that. You can't, again, when you think about a source, when you think about a higher power, when you think about God, you can't help but even look at something that small and something that you would think is so oh, this is just whatever. The collaboration that we had all weekend through the creative process, that
Yeah.
doesn't happen if you have two laptops.
Exactly.
It's so interesting how that all sets up. But going back to the previous point about like simplicity of what you want in life, and this is something me and you've talked about recently, I think it all comes down to like progress, but progress not in the what does it look like what, not seeing progress in terms of numbers going up or whatever, but the feeling of putting yourself through something hard and slowly but surely getting better at it. When you feel that, that's for me what I felt, that's where my purpose lies. It's like, am I getting better or am I getting worse? And when you think about understanding this mentality that you've shared with me, like this one day out mentality, it's like you don't know what you're one day out from. And that's what you've spoken into me. And I'm like, okay, if I don't know what tomorrow looks like, I'm all I care about is did I get better today?
Yeah.
And it sounds so cliche. Even when I say that, it like I cringe a bit, but it's like the dedication to progress and the dedication to am I taking one step further? Like that's what fuels me
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't even like mention that, but like I had this thing come to me in my sleep the other day, and I like woke up, shot out of bed, and I had this phrase "one day out" come to me, and I didn't know what it was or what it meant or anything, but I just like got up and wrote it down, like, and then like went back to sleep. And one day out is just like you could be one day out from meeting God. You could be one day out from your last day. Like, how would you live today if you knew you were one day out? But at the same time, it's like you could be one day out from having a breakthrough, meeting your business partner, meeting your future spouse. Like, and that in turn is like you need to be at your best in order for those things to happen. So it's like, how are you preparing today if you were going to be one day out from this happening?
You can't give yourself the angst about being your best.
Yeah.
You just need to show up.
That's also a great point. That's also a great point. Just show up.
You just show up and trust it.
And
putting less angst. We were talking about that earlier before we even got started. It's like, let's just roll. Let's just roll and see where this goes and trust that it's going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I mean, in my opinion, I mean, I'm like the rookie in content, creating content, but you know, it's kind of like taking experiences from the people that I've met in my journey and how that even happened. You know, a lot of the times, just like as I look back, I'll convince myself why I don't want to do something. And when I say that in myself, there's another part of my mind that I've trained to say, all right, listen to that, do that, go there. You know, it was even today. I was like, you know, I just got back from a show. I haven't slept in 4 days. I'm like, you know what? This is important to you. I'm excited to meet Dom. Like, just go, and something will come from it.
Exactly.
But that wasn't initially. That's not the purpose. It was just trusting this process in this time, in this present, and being present.
Yep.
All right. To wrap it up, I have a question for you. Obviously, the show name is Piece of Grit. Grit has been something in my life that has fundamentally changed who I am. And now everything that I do is grit. It's grit mentality. It's grit digital. It's everything. What does grit mean to you?
Grit to me means embracing discomfort and moving forward regardless. You know, I see when I think about grit, I think of like where I started. You know, I think of like I literally was just I had a laptop, right? And like it took some grit, it took some elbow grease, it took some I also think grit means like doing the best you can with what you have and not making any excuses for it, because we all can make excuses as to why we can't do something, but we need to start like rationalizing like as to, you know, why we can do it. And literally, like, we made a YouTube video with an iPhone today. Like, that's grit, right?
That's
like
grit.
it's doing the unpopular thing because you know that you're called to do it. So it's like leaning into leaning into what you know in your heart and in your gut that you're supposed to do, because you're having like those things, are those ideas, those thoughts, those coming to you for a reason. And it's just energy, like it flows and it's flowing to you for a reason. And it's up to you to choose to either like grasp it, or it's going to float away and somebody else is going to take it and go do it. So I think grit is just, embracing that discomfort, embracing novelty, and just moving forward in knowing that it's going to be messy.
Well, Dom, thank you. I don't think we could have kicked off this podcast
Definitely.
any better.
Thank you, Dom.
So thank you for coming on. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe. I don't even have the YouTube channel yet, so like subscribe to something. Thank you again, Dom, and what a first podcast,
Dude. Love you, bro. Love you, brother. So glad that you decided to reach out, and the way that we connected, it's hilarious. Like, just through Instagram DMs, and Ben, just meeting you today. It's been amazing to see what you've accomplished and hear your journey and your story. And I'm really excited for you guys to continue to grow this podcast. This is going to be amazing.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Thanks, brother.